Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. You definitely want to be a member of the Posse. And joining me on today's episode, stock picking bartender. Why don't you go ahead and give yourself a little bit of an introduction?
Hello. My name is Michael. I'm known on Twitter as the stock picking bartender. I've been on Twitter for several years. I always post all my buys and sells, etc. I'm pretty transparent about what I do, and it's a great place to be. So I'm just here on the Passive Income Podcast, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you as part of the Posse. That's awesome. And just so the viewers and listeners know, I think most people know I'm in Canada, and you are in, if I'm not mistaken, Nevada.
Yeah. Reno.
Okay, so we'll have a little bit of back and forth between the Canadian and U.S. markets and some of the differences and similarities and whatnot. And I don't know if you know much or anything about the Canadian markets or whatever, but we'll just kind of get into it and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. But before we get into it, I do have to plug the merch, buyinvestingshirts.com. Link in the description below. Use the code word Posse. So yeah, you can definitely check out. They have some great designs over on that website. And now that the plug is out of the way, let's get right into it. And yeah, let's I guess just start. What is sort of sort of your favorite companies, favorite sectors that you really focus on?
Uh, as some people may know, most of what I do is dividend stocks, which is, I guess, why I'm here. I do have
Yeah.
a much smaller growth portfolio. But as far as dividends go, I really like REITs. Um, REITs and financials are two that I really like right now.
Okay.
I'm into renewable energy stocks, that sort of thing. So we can start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, awesome. So, most of my viewers and listeners know that I love REITs as well. I have quite a few different REITs in the uh, on the Toronto Stock Exchange, so in the Canadian market. And what I really like about the REITs that I hold, they're a monthly dividend payer, and
Mhm.
I'm guessing the majority of Americans that I've had on the Passive Income Podcast, like 98%, 99%, there's only been two that don't hold Realty Income, ticker symbol O. But I'm guessing if you love REITs, I'm sure you have a position in that company.
Actually, I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Um, I own something kind of similar, Alpine Income, but it's much smaller. Um, I want to say it's around 250 million market cap, where I think O is
A
40
lot
some
more.
million, maybe
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And I did some calculations the other day, and if this Alpine Income got to be as big as O, I'd have like $1.6 million in it, which is unrealistic for several reasons,
Yeah.
given how REITs fund themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But it just kind of goes to show that dividend stocks don't always have to be, stuffy insurance companies or breakfast cereal makers. A lot of people have room for something that's smaller, riskier. Doesn't always have to be, I don't want to say boring, because I love dividend stocks, right? And you do too.
Yeah. Of course.
But, you know, you could get a little exciting here and there. Yeah. But as far as, REITs in Canada, are they similar to the ones in America?
Yeah, so very similar in the fact that okay, one of my favorites that I hold is called RealCan. It's ticker symbol REI .un or .to, depending on how you look it up. And so they have a kind of a wide variety of different types of properties. The one I'm most familiar with is a retail space that's the size of three football fields, four football fields, and so like one of the the anchor store is a Home Depot, and then there's a few Canadian bank branches within the property. There's uh, obviously several retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters. So and then they have other properties throughout Canada as well. So yeah, so there's quite a wide variety of different types of REITs that I have. I have another one that is just automotive properties. They're primarily in Western Canada, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and they just own the property the car lots sit on. And if you think of 1,000 cars on a car lot, that's a lot of acreage in a city like Vancouver where the real estate prices are absolutely insane. So that real
Yeah.
estate is worth a lot of money. I have another one called NWH, which is Northwest Healthcare, and so they focus on obviously healthcare properties, doctors' offices, medical clinics, and the such. So yeah, it's like I feel like I'm diversified just within my REITs, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the great thing about REITs. I mean, if you're interested in healthcare, I have I have four REITs total. Two of them are healthcare REITs. One of them, Medical Properties Trust, is mainly hospitals. I have Healthcare Realty, which is mainly medical office buildings. Um, if you like retail, I have Alpine, like I was telling you about, which has a lot of the same tenants as Income Realty.
Right.
If you like tech, I have Digital Realty Trust, which is data centers. So there's all kinds of things you can do with REITs. It's not just, apartment buildings. Although I would like to own a apartment building REIT. It's one of the things I'm looking to get into.
Right.
I just haven't yet. Yeah.
Yeah, there's obviously we have a few of those types of REITs as well, the apartment buildings, and same. I don't own any of those yet, but I probably will someday at some
Mhm,
point.
mhm.
Get my toes in the water. I do have another one kind of along that healthcare line where they're more focused on the seniors homes and long term care type facilities. So and so again, you're circling back to the healthcare. You're circling back to, like you said, retail. The different automotive properties, whatever you want to call that. And so, like I said, I feel like I'm diversified just within my REITs alone, right?
Oh yeah, I mean most of these REITs own hundreds of buildings, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, if not thousands. Yeah.
exactly. And I guess the other number one thing I love about REITs, well, the monthly dividend is really nice for
Mhm.
all of them that I have. But other than that, is the fact that you have this exposure to real estate without being the landlord, right? You don't have to hire a property manager. You don't have to maintain a building. You don't have to answer the phone at 2 a.m. because something went wrong.
Yeah, you don't have to pledge the toilets.
It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
you know, I have this exposure to real estate, and I do nothing to earn the income. I
yeah.
love it.
It's much simpler. You want to buy something, you log onto your computer, you buy it. You want to
Yeah,
sell it for some reason, you're done. I
yeah,
I I don't have the demeanor to be a landlord. I don't want to get into that. I,
yeah.
I
Same.
I'll buy a REIT.
Yeah,
For
same.
people who do it, I mean, it could be great. They can make a lot of money, but
Sure.
it's not my thing.
Yeah, I've had a couple of guests that are doing quite well with physical real estate. Lauren at Adulting is Easy, and uh, the Frugal Gay, both of them just doing amazing with um, their investments in actual physical real estate. But yeah, like you said, it's just not for me, not my cup of tea, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now you did also mention financials in there, so obviously, I'm sure just from being on Twitter, you've seen tweets about the Canadian banks. What is your any knowledge of the Canadian banks, or I guess let's just jump into banking and the financial sector, and we'll see where this section takes us.
Well, I did recently get an interest in Canadian banks because of seeing some guests on your show and hearing you talk about it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually looking to start one new position relatively soon, um, and there's what, five or six big banks. I
Right.
haven't really done a deep dive in any of them yet, but probably the most interesting looking, just on the surface, was the Imperial Bank of Commerce. Do you know much about that one?
Yeah, CIBC, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. So,
Yeah, yeah.
same. Well, I do know that my credit card is with them. My Visa is a CIBC Visa, so
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
do pay them, I guess, every month. But yeah, I haven't. I
So
don't
they know
know.
you.
Yeah, they know me. I don't know as much about them because that's not one of the ones I'm focused on. And yeah,
Mhm.
you were correct. They are called the Big Five, and then you can include National Bank as the sixth. And if you even look at the past 10 years, the National Bank is doing as good or better than the other Big Five. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll DM you a tweet that I keep sharing with everybody. It's from Settling Nomads, and I'm like the biggest fan of that tweet because it just shows you uh, the longevity of the dividend payments. One bank going back to 1829, so coming up on 200 years of dividend payments, right? So
It's a great
just the
history.
consistency.
Oh yeah, yeah. That shows discipline, and they care about the shareholders. Care may not be the great word, but they're doing the work for them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I beyond the Canadian banks, obviously there's some huge banks in the US as well, your JP Morgans and your Bank of America, Wells Fargo.
Hmm.
What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on any of those big banks or any other US banking and financials?
Well, I own JP Morgan fairly recently. I also own US Bancorp, parent company of US Bank, which I think is one of the larger regional banks, I
Right.
want to say. So yeah, I think banking in general is good right now. Um, I don't think things are generally as bad in the economy going forward as a lot of people seem to think. So I think banks are a good place to be for me. Of
Sure.
course, not financial advice. I'm sure you have the little thing down here that says, "Hey, we're just two guys talking, whatever," right? Um, but yeah, I think banks are great. I'm like I say, I'm even maybe thinking about a Canadian bank.
Cool. Interesting. And you also there in the opening mentioned renewables. So let's talk
Mhm.
about energy sort of as,
Okay.
the whole broad scope of the energy sector, oil and gas, and where you think oil and gas is and where it's going, and with the future of renewables.
Okay. Okay. Well, before we leave off financials, I should mention that my largest position is actually in Prudential Financial, mainly an insurance company. Great
Right.
dividend, great company. Moving on.
Yeah, not
Um,
financial advice, but if you want to buy it,
yeah,
do your own due diligence
yeah.
and do your
It's a
own
great company
research.
for me, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. Uh, so I do own a couple of companies in the renewable energy space. I don't really have any other energy companies right now, and they're more utilities, but I know you kind of lump them all together, and so do I.
Yeah. Yeah.
I own Brookfield Renewable and Atlantica Sustainable, which I
Cool.
believe is out of the UK. Yeah,
So Anthony,
and
who I'm
okay,
sure you know Anthony on Twitter at Newcomer Investor. He's the biggest
yes.
cheerleader for Brookfield. He'll be very
Mhm.
happy to hear this and that you own Brookfield.
Yeah, yeah. The Brookfield Renewable Corporation. That's the only one I own, but they've got a whole family of things to own, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They have a very nice little what I would call an ecosystem of different companies focusing on sort of the different, like you say, that one that focuses on the renewables, and you'd have to go back and actually listen to my conversation with Anthony at Newcomer Investor. He really breaks it down well and really explains what they all are because he's very knowledgeable in all of Brookfield. So shout out
Yeah.
to Anthony.
Yeah, if you look at a chart of how they're organized, it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
And I believe the Brookfield Asset Management, like the I don't know the parent or whatever you'd want to call it, they're actually in Canada, right?
correct. Yeah,
Okay, cool. But
yeah,
yeah, I think renewables a great place to be. I mean, these companies, they own solar farms, they own wind farms, and that's where we're going in this country and the world, right? I mean,
yeah.
we're not getting rid of oil and gas anytime soon, and I would certainly invest in some if I saw something I wanted to buy. But I think renewable energy, renewable utilities, that's a great place to be long term.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you just said there. Like, we're not getting rid of oil and gas anytime soon. It's going to be around for a long time. So if you're looking at companies like ExxonMobil or BP or Shell. Those are probably great places for you to invest. Again, do your own research, do your own due diligence. I'm not trying to give anyone financial advice, but yeah, oil and gas is still here for a long time. But exactly what you just said, I agree. There's the future is in the renewables with the wind and the solar and whatever other you know renewable resource technology comes along. So
Yeah.
and I think there's probably more room for growth as well with the renewables as we keep
Yeah. Yeah.
as we keep moving towards the future of using more and more of that renewable energy. So
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of vilification of, oil and gas these days, but
sure.
we need it. It's here. It's here to stay
Yeah.
for a long time. But the renewable technology keeps getting better. We just keep moving forward, right?
Yeah, not everybody's going to be driving a Tesla tomorrow, right? Like
Yeah.
we're
No.
still the majority of people are still driving ICE, like internal combustion engine vehicles.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
cool. Anything else on the energy sector before we move on?
Can't think of anything.
Okay, cool. Telecommunications. I find this one kind of interesting because it's fairly similar. Where in Canada we have three big companies, being Bell Canada, TELUS, and Rogers, and then in Quebec they have Quebecor, which is I guess a fourth one. And in the U.S. you kind of have similar three big companies: AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and then I know there's smaller players as well. But I guess just what are your thoughts on anything in the telecommunications sector?
Well, I recently took a look at Verizon. I didn't really think it was for me. They have to invest a lot of money all the time. Great dividend though. I actually owned AT&T fairly recently, um, but I was all for their acquisition. Bringing all the content and the distribution, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I was kind of caught in that situation where they spun it all out and cut the dividend, et cetera. I got out with like a 1% gain or something stupid like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know why the company didn't drop more immediately when they made that announcement, but I was all for what they were doing with their business. And, they were saying everything was great till it wasn't. So I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth from AT&T. So it's not something I want to get back into anytime soon. So don't really have any great interest in going back into that sector right now.
Yeah, interesting. I think with AT&T, it looked great what they were trying to do. Like you said, bringing all these different types of media companies and corporations together, and I'm not exactly sure the exact history of what companies they were acquiring and what went wrong exactly and what led
Mhm.
exactly to that dividend cut. But yeah, if you were in that situation at that time, that's dividend cuts are never fun to live through. I've just recently went through one in January and one a few months prior to that, and it's like, "Oh, really? Come on."
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the game long enough, it's going to happen to you, right?
Right. And you just I guess, like you said, if you're in the game long enough, you hopefully your dividend raises, over the years outweigh or outgrow your dividend cuts. It's like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a dividend raise, that's like the best thing. That feels more like free money than anything.
yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, I just got one of those, I guess it was earlier this month, actually, it was Bell Canada and the telecoms that announced it, so it was like I think 5.2% raise, which was
Mhm. Nice.
pretty nice, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And, again, so many people on Twitter make the point of, like, they just give you a raise. You don't have to ask your boss, you don't have to plead your case. They just say, "Hey, here's some more money.
Here's
Thank
some
you."
more money. Yeah, 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 yeah. And that should generally, if you're doing everything right, that should generally way outweigh any time you get a dividend cut.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Um, consumer staples, consumer discretionary. I kinda lump these 2 together, sort of your staples being the Walmarts and the Costcos. People have to get their groceries every week or whenever. consumer discretionary, more like your Cokes and Pepsis. You're going to Walmart every week, but you might not buy Coke and Pepsi or Pepsi products. So,
Mhm, mhm.
um, but I guess just your thoughts on that sector and any of those four companies or any other companies sort of in consumer staples and discretionary.
Well, one, I own a Starbucks fairly recently. It's been good so far. Uh, People are always going to want their coffee, right? I mean, I got mine right here. I don't think it's Starbucks,
Nice.
but coffee's addicting. I'm an addict, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think Starbucks is great. It's not a huge yield right now, but I think it'll be a great growth company going forward, dividend growth, etc. Um, I also own Altria and Philip Morris, so cigarette makers.
Oh, the
That's
sin sector.
the sin stocks. Yes. I saw your conversation with Barry several weeks ago.
Yeah.
Great follow. Go find that conversation. That was great. But yeah, as far as consumer cyclical, consumer defensive, those three companies, addicting things, right? Don't
Yeah.
smoke.
Yeah. Starbucks, I think, is a great case study for, like you said, that potential for long term growth. We have tons of Starbucks here, obviously in Canada. They're now a global company from what they started with that one store in Seattle
Oh yeah.
30 or 40 years ago, or 50 I don't even know how long ago it was, but um, and yeah, now they're in I don't know how many countries in the world, and they're always busy. There's always people there, and those people aren't just buying a $2 or $3 coffee. They're buying a five, six, seven, $8 coffee, right? And
I am aware.
yeah, so
My wife loves Starbucks. Um, and everyone is so worried about, China in Starbucks, or Starbucks in China, I should say.
right,
But everyone's so worried about China. Starbucks is a great company. You know, I'm
and
not
it's
concerned about the day-to-day fluctuations of what China's doing in terms of Starbucks. It's a great company. I want to own it.
yeah, and it's very difficult for any company, whether it's Starbucks or whoever, to just ignore a market that is over 1 billion people. Like, I think they're
Yeah,
even might be closing in on 2 billion people, and like, you know, whatever that is, like almost a quarter of the world population, right? Or
yeah. They
maybe
want
not
a
quite a
piece of that
quarter,
pie.
but so yeah, how does a company like Starbucks just say, oh, we don't want to market to those billion plus people? That would be
Yeah.
absolutely
They
insane.
Yeah, they can't say that. I wouldn't want them to. I want them to go in there and do what they can. But I'm not so concerned about that particular part of the business that I would not want to own the stock.
Right.
But if
Not
people
not
want to sell
concerned
it
with
for
the
that reason,
politics. Not concerned with
yeah,
the
yeah,
politics of China or any other country. It's like we're just trying to make some passive income, just some
yeah,
dividends, right? Like
exactly,
leave
exactly,
the politics to the politicians, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah.
We did touch briefly on healthcare, I think, or I was talking a little bit. We were talking a little bit about healthcare within the REITs, but any other thoughts on sort of the broader healthcare?
Well, the only dividend stock that I have that is healthcare is Pfizer. I think I want to say it's my second largest position right now. Um, and it's gone down quite a bit recently because everyone's thinking, I guess, the whole COVID thing is not going to go forward, which is great. Great,
Yeah,
it'd be really good if they made less money off of COVID. That'd be great for everyone.
right.
Um, but I think everything that they've learned through this COVID situation and the cash flow that they've generated from it that they can put to use, I think Pfizer's a great company long term. And I'm in it. I want to stay in it. I want to buy more.
Yeah, I think that's probably a tough one to argue because, just beyond the COVID vaccines and whatnot, obviously Pfizer has tons of other uh, products as well, and they've been
Yeah.
around for an extremely long time. And correct me if I'm wrong, are they a dividend king?
I want to say no.
Okay,
I'm not 100%, but
somebody let us know in the comments if Pfizer is a dividend aristocrat or dividend king or not at all. Let us know in the comments.
yeah, I don't think they are.
But
I,
yeah, sorry to put you
but
on the
as far
spot on that
as,
one.
yeah, I feel like this is a test I haven't studied for.
Yeah, well,
No, it's great. It's great. But as far as healthcare in general, as I mentioned, I have a much smaller growth portfolio. A lot of my companies in that are healthcare, tech related, etc. And you had a conversation with, was it Decade Investor? I want to say that he had a lot of interest in healthcare tech.
yes.
Yes.
I think that
Yeah,
was
I
the
don't want
one
to.
where we were talking about how technology has just crept into every sector. Like, whether it's because obviously we rely on technology for everything now, right? Whether even something like this, we're using obviously the internet
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're using technology. So, every sector or technology has crept into every sector. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, healthcare definitely is one of those, definitely one of those sectors that it's made an impact on.
Yeah.
I don't think you own it, or else he would have said. But I am kind of curious if you have any thoughts on Johnson and Johnson and what they're planning to do soon with the split into their sort of one division being pharmaceutical and another division being more the consumer side. Any thoughts on that, or do you know much about this?
I don't know a whole lot specifically about that split, but I've read a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I kind of like more conglomerate setup, right? I don't see anything wrong with a drug maker, healthcare company having this little consumer section that generates cash flow. I guess they're trying to unlock shareholder value, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I personally like a business that has a couple of different things going that, one can feed the other, but I can't say specifically whether or not I like the whole Johnson and Johnson thing, but if I was a shareholder and following it, I would guess it's probably not something I would like.
Right. Interesting thoughts, and I kind of agree with you there that you know I'm more of a fan of the conglomerate, a bigger company. I don't see the
Hmm.
purpose of them splitting in two, but obviously,
Yeah,
the higher ups in that company, the executives and the CEOs and whoever, and the CFOs and all of those people obviously have their reasoning for doing it. We don't know
yeah,
what it is exactly. I'm sure somebody can
yeah,
tell you.
yeah. I mean, like I say, a lot of these companies they want to, I guess, unlock shareholder value, and okay, now there's two stocks instead of one, and maybe they'll go up more. I don't know. I would probably prefer it all just under one roof, and if the share price doesn't go up as much, well, whatever. They're internally funding
Right.
things, maybe better for the dividend. I don't know.
Yeah. No, interesting thoughts for sure on that one. So we have been kind of talking a little bit about technology here and there. So let's just kind of dive more into that sector with, obviously in the US is an incredible technology sector with your Amazons and Googles and Facebook, Meta, and so many others, Microsoft and Apple. And I know all of the ones I just mentioned aren't all dividend payers, and some have really low dividend yields. But I guess just your thoughts on what we consider like I guess the core technology sector, not this technology creeping into every other sector.
Yeah, the only dividend stock that I own that I would say is really technology. I own Intel, um,
Okay,
which I think it's going to be great going forward. Obviously, because I own it. I think the whole thing, bringing the chip manufacturing back to America, out of some of these other countries that there may be questionable practices going on. I think
right.
that's going to be great for Intel. I see our government helping them even more doing this going forward, but who knows? Chips are going to be in everything, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'll probably have a a chip in my coffee cup in 10 years. Who knows?
Very possible, right? That
Yeah,
chip in the
it'll
cup
you know
saying,
it'll
okay, is that
sense
the
when it's
perfect
cold.
temperature? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A little too
Exactly.
hot, perfect temperature. Oh, too cold, stick it
Yes.
in the microwave.
So, I mean, is it a little bit risky now? They got all this money they got to spend to build new factories, and it's the kind of thing where, if they don't perform, it won't be a great investment. But if they do, I think the potential's there for it to be a great investment, a great dividend stock going forward.
Right.
As far as the Apples and the Microsofts, I tend not to buy stocks that have yields that low. And I know a lot of people like it because they think it's going to grow faster, and that's fine. It probably will. Mm, if I'm interested in a tech stock that doesn't really pay a very good dividend, I'm going to go for something more risky in my smaller growth portfolio. That's the
Right.
way I think about it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Those lower yields are less appealing. I'm not sure how old you are, but I know I've had a lot of very young guests on here, like early 20s, mid 20s, and for them, they've got time on their side to say, yeah, I'm going to jump into Apple. It's got a really low yield right now, but I've got 20 or 30 years to watch this company grow even bigger than it already is, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it is probably just the stage you're at, where for me, I want that higher yield of, and again, going back to why I like REITs, because you know, a lot of them are between 6 and 9%, which is incredible yield compared to that the safe 3 to 5%. Um, but I feel that the REITs tend to be safe in that 6 to 9% because they're dealing with bricks and mortar buildings. They're dealing with tenants that pay a rent or a lease every month, right? So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think REITs are amazing. I mean, there's always going to be a demand for property.
yeah,
Uh, they can make missteps like any other organization, right? But the base demand is always going to be there. Everyone's going to need, to go to the store to buy something. You know, they're going to need warehouses to house things, for Amazon to bring to your doorstep. All
yeah,
these places, real estate's not going anywhere. Totally agree. I would say in terms of smaller yields, probably Starbucks, I want to say, is the lowest yielding stock I own. And you can have a stock yielding 4, 5, 6% that still has growth. It may not be 20% a year, but
right.
you don't have to totally sacrifice dividend growth just to get yield. You got to find that balance. I like to find that balance.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Finding the balance.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
Go for it.
go ahead.
No, go you, all you.
Okay. So probably one of my favorite things to look on in Excel is in my spreadsheet. Anytime I buy something, of course, I keep track of how much, my average monthly dividends going forward. I have a list of expenses, from the smallest to the largest. And, I may have Netflix, which is, small expense. And then I got, larger car maintenance, gas, all this kind of stuff. Right. And so I'll watch. And anytime my dividend income on a monthly basis overtakes an expense, you do a little happy dance, right?
Yeah,
And that's one of the great things about dividend investing. Eventually, these dividends are gonna fund your life, right? I mean, not
that's
now.
the goal.
Now I'm reinvesting my dividends, but it's just so fun to watch this number go up every month, a little bit until, okay, now this is covered. Now this is covered. And 20 years from now, hopefully, it's all covered.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm the exact same way. It's like, oh, I have enough to cover my phone bill if I had to, or my internet uh, bill, or my electricity bill, or whatever. And like you said, these smaller expenses for, say, a streaming service that is $12 or $14, which
Hmm.
isn't that
Hmm.
much, but it does add up. And
Yeah.
And yeah, you're more expensive. Your rent or mortgage, obviously, and insurance. Those are probably your biggest expenses every month. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's another reason. So I don't know if you've heard my. It's not even my term. People on Twitter give me credit for it though, but the turn the cash register around idea,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
you're investing in the companies that you use. Like, my mortgage is through Bank of Nova Scotia, one of the big five Canadian banks. So I started buying shares in BNS, Bank of Nova Scotia. I pay my phone bill to Bell Canada, so I've started buying shares in Bell Canada. Um, the electric company in Ontario is called Hydro One, so I've started buying shares in Hydro One. Right, like turn the cash register around, get them to pay me to pay them.
And that's a great place to look for stocks, right? You're a customer, you pay the money every month or every quarter or whatever. Why not start looking there?
Yeah, I think it's again, not financial advice, but for people starting out, that's what other than ETFs. ETFs are obviously probably the best place to start. Um, but the whole turn the cash register around investing strategy, to me, I think is as close to a no brainer as it gets. Like you said, you're familiar with the company. Tons of other people that paid to these companies, like your friends, your family that paid the bills to these companies. Yeah. So, and like with Hydro One, the electricity company here in Ontario, you know, over 95% of Ontarians pay their bill to Hydro One. So it's like that's a lot of people you know, paying a bill to that company every month. So I don't know. I guess kind of what are your thoughts on that sort of strategy?
Well, like I say, it's a great place to start. Um, I don't necessarily think that I would, have to match exactly. Okay, I have this much dividends coming in from this company.
Right.
When I'm kind of choosing what I want to invest in or add to, usually I just look at where the stock is. I like to add to things that have gone down.
Dollar cost average down. I'm a
Dollar
big fan
cost
of that as well.
averaging. If I got, I think, 14 stocks in a couple different accounts, when I have some money to put in, okay, well, this one's gone down this week, so this is probably a good place to go. Um, but in terms of getting your start, why not look at the companies like you suggest?
Yeah.
Bell Canada's, your mortgage company. You're paying them all this money, so everyone else.
Yeah.
Why not get in on it?
And so with those three examples I just gave you, I'm a long way away from having enough shares to cover those bills, but it's the start. Just get on base, as people have heard me say, my Moneyball reference. Just get on base. Just get
Get
started.
on base.
Just get
Yeah,
on base, right?
exactly.
And then watch the snowball. Watch that snowball effect grow. As you mentioned earlier, every month you see it go up a little bit, little by little,
Hmm.
every month, brick by
Hmm.
brick, as we say on Twitter. Just watch it continue to grow. Hopefully it continues to grow for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you're first starting out, doesn't look very impressive, right?
No, 50 cents, a dollar, and you're like, "Oh, I can't even buy a coffee for a dollar anymore."
Right,
Right?
right. Yeah. But 3, 4 years down the line, it's going to start looking better and better.
Yeah. Even if all of a sudden it's $50 a month, it's like, "Oh, $50 is nothing to sneeze at," right? Like $50 is $50. And then another year or so down the line, it's 100 or maybe 200, and all of a sudden then you're getting into the where what we're talking about is like, "Oh, I could, if I really needed to, I could take that 150 or $200 and pay a bill or whatever, pay my phone bill, pay my internet,
Hmm.
whatever," right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But obviously the key is you wanna keep reinvesting that 150 or whatever you're at, 250,
Yeah.
500, whatever you're getting every month, every quarter, you wanna keep reinvesting in,
Oh
obviously.
yeah. Yeah. You want to have a little emergency fund like everyone talks about, right? So you don't have to dip into those dividends, if you don't really have to,
Yeah.
because like you say, you want that snowball to grow. And when it's time to retire, hey, you got all this cash flow coming in, because you're not going to have it from your job unless you want to work until you're 75. I don't.
No, most people don't, right? Or 80 or
Yeah.
85.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
think a lot of people want to like get to work optional at say whatever the number is for that person, 55, 60. Some people
mhm.
might want to work till 65 and then just, do something on the side where it's like they can work 1 or 2 days a week just to get out of the house or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to be at 65, you don't want to still be going, I have to work 40 hours a week just to make ends meet. That's not where we're trying to get to.
Nope. Nope. You don't want to get up at 5 a.m. 5 days a week,
Definitely not.
get in that car, take that commute. No, you don't want to do that.
And I think the other key or neat thing, if you were to get in trouble, not I don't want to say get in trouble, but if you did have to withdraw, say $100 of your dividends 1 month to cover your bills, you still have you're not selling the shares in your company, so you still have the initial investment, and so the following month you're still going to get that $100 again. So it's not the end of the world if you did have to do it.
Yeah. It's an option.
It's an option. It's an
Yeah.
option. Um,
Better than a lot of other options out there, I'm sure.
right. Well,
Y-
like putting more debt on your credit card, for example,
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
be the better option.
Or
Um,
going to a payday loan place or something. Yeah.
right, exactly. And one last sector that we haven't talked about, and honestly, I don't really talk about it much on the podcast, but I should talk about it more, is the transportation sector. Um, Transportation obviously is so important in the global economy, moving products around, but we really see it here in North America. Obviously, Canada and the US are both very large countries, and we're constantly moving products from coast to coast, you know, north to south, whether it's by truck or by rail. And, without those truck drivers and those rail operators, we just wouldn't have products on the store shelves, right? So,
Oh yeah. It wouldn't take that long.
I guess just any thoughts on the whole transportation industry as a whole?
Well, I don't currently own anything, but it's kind of always in the back of my mind that hey, I should look into FedEx or UPS. It's
Right.
it's something that you know why shouldn't I have some exposure to that? But I guess it's just not on my priority list.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Two more great companies that we rely on daily, right? FedEx,
mm,
Amazon, or FedEx, UPS, Pure Later. I was thinking of them
yeah.
delivering Amazon packages on the daily, right? So,
Oh yeah, yeah, I
um,
get those all the time.
and yeah, so I guess just I don't own any transportation companies either right now. We have two very large rail companies in Canada, and the people that own them love them because, very wide moat. Nobody's going to build another railroad right beside uh, CN or CP. CN being Canadian National and CP being
Hmm.
Canadian Pacific. So, um, again, I know I've shied away from them because again, it goes back to that lower dividend yield, but they are obviously, very strong companies that we rely on in both Canada and the US to move those products from coast to coast. And yeah, and there's also some trucking companies that I've looked at that are publicly traded, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on them yet. Um, Again, probably I'm just looking at them going, is there potential for growth? I know how competitive the trucking industry is. So yeah, that's I guess just my thoughts on transportation. Anything to add to transportation? Because there is that one more sector I want to get into before we end it.
um, I guess I don't have any thoughts because, like I say, I haven't really looked into it.
Yeah,
I'm I, I'm a customer every day. I go to the grocery store. It's like you say,
it's
it's
just there.
important for everyone.
The things are just there on the shelf. You don't think about how
Yeah,
they get there, right?
yeah, yeah. They don't just pop there out of thin air, right? There's
Right.
all these thousands and thousands of people every day out there getting us what we need, and you're right. It's something maybe I should look into because
We're very reliant on it, right? Like
yeah,
we need those products moved from point A to point B. And going back to your earlier point too about the real estate and the warehousing. So, sometimes point B is a warehouse, like a distribution center. You know, Costco has distribution centers where everything comes to one DC and then ships out to the various stores from there. So
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. So a
again, you can get
warehouse
point A,
REIT.
point B, point C. Yeah,
Yeah, a warehouse REIT would be maybe something to look into. I mean, that's the great thing about the stock market, right? That is,
penny
I got
stocks
like
too.
maybe, yeah, I got like maybe 10 things I need to get onto and look into, right? It can get overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
so many hours in the day, right?
Oh, I've also said before though, this isn't Pokemon. You can't catch them all. Like there's
Oh, no,
so many stocks out, so many companies
no.
out there, and it's like you see so many of them. And you go, oh, I'd love to buy that company. I'd love to have that company. I'd love to own that company. But
Mhm.
realistically, it's like, how many should you have in your portfolio? I've had some guests that have like, I've got 10. That's all they need. Or others that, 12, 15. Other guests say, I'm okay with 20. I'm okay with 20 to 25. And I've had other people just with really, really high numbers of how many different companies they hold in their portfolio of like over 50, over 60, over 70. And it's like, to each their own. I'm
Oh, yeah.
right now I'm in that 20 to 25 range and I'm comfortable with that. So everybody has their own, I guess, different strategies as to how many that they think they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, if
I
you
want
have
to
that
say,
lower number,
yeah, I want to say I'm at 14 for my dividend stocks.
yeah,
And,
which is probably
you
a
know,
good number because with only 14, you can focus on that dollar cost averaging and just building up those positions so that
mhm.
every month or every quarter, those, you know, you're getting paid more, right? So,
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes. You see this great new idea you're interested in, but okay, this other company that I own that I really love, it just went down $5. Hey, and I got $300 I want to put into it. Why not? It's a give and take. And as far as some people have 10 dividend stocks, some people have 42, whatever, right? I mean,
yeah,
to each their own. I'm big on everyone has their own path. My way may not be your way. One thing I really don't like is everyone who's, oh, hey, here's how you do it. Here's how you do it.
yeah,
This worked for me. This is what you should be doing. No, you should know yourself as an investor. You take ideas from everyone, look into it yourself, but ultimately, that's your portfolio.
yeah.
Manage it how you want to.
I should mention that's my total holdings is somewhere between that 20 to 25, and I don't know how many I have that aren't dividend payers, 4 or 5. The majority of my holdings are dividend payers.
Mhm.
Um, and I agree with you on that whole, you can't just copy someone else. You do have to find your own path. And that's what I've been really trying to do here with the Passive Income podcast by having so many different people, so many different perspectives, so many different ideas, so many different, strategies. And I'm really hoping everybody is learning from everybody because that's the primary goal of what I'm doing, right? Is like I'm having obviously an amazing time talking to people like yourself and I'm learning a little bit from every person that I have a conversation with, right?
Yeah, and I think it's great. I've watched, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 of your podcasts, and I know I've got a backlog. I got to get to the rest of them. But I mean, you're talking to people like me. I've never been on a podcast before. I don't know if you can tell, but
You're doing great.
you know, um, and when we followed each other, and I saw, oh, you're inviting all these people to be on a podcast. Maybe he's going to invite me to be on a podcast. And I thought, nah, he's not going to invite me. Why would he invite me? And you did. Here I am. So I think it's great. I mean, you have, people with thousands of followers, and you got, people with hundreds of followers. You're getting
People with hundreds of
everything in the
thousands of
mix.
followers too.
Yes, yes. I mean, you got some big stuff coming up, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so well, Decade Investor has 123,000, and then Dividend Heroes coming up later this month as well. And obviously, he's a very popular character in the Div Twit
Mhm.
community.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think what you're doing is great. I'm here for it.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. One final sector, and I don't want to. I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. Um, but kind of, it obviously it's not the transportation sector, but I'm going to circle it into the transportation sector, and I'll tell you why. But it's like the heavy industrials. your Caterpillars, your John Deeres, and um, those types of companies. Any thoughts on that sector? Just heavy, the industrial sector, basically.
Not something I own anything of, but again, it's it's important for my country, your country. I mean, we got to have tractors to till the land to grow the food, right? That doesn't
And
come
that
from
was
nowhere.
exactly what I was going to circle back to, is the tractors and the farming, and how the farmer and the trucker are the two most important people in our lives that we never think about, right? We
Yeah,
never think
yeah,
about those
yeah,
two people, but without those two people, we all starve, right?
yeah. My parents were farmers. I grew up until I was like 9 or 10 on a dairy farm in Missouri.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's important. I'm not sure what the yields are on like a Caterpillar or a John Deere, but they pay a dividend. Uh,
Yeah.
Something to look into. I know you and Barry Mulligan. I think I'm saying his name right. We're
Milligan, yeah.
Milligan. Yeah, we're talking about that. How technology is creeped into that sector as well. And again, one of those 10, 15 things I need to look into, right?
Yeah, but again, you can't. It's not Pokemon. You can't catch them
You
all.
can't
So it's
catch them
like, if
all. Yeah.
if you don't buy John Deere, it's not the end of the world. But if you do buy John Deere, and you've done your research, and that is a comfortable fit for you, then that's great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you just hold on to the 14 that you have now that are dividend payers, keep adding more and adding more, I mean, that strategy works too, right? So
Yeah.
there's 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 no one right way to do it. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's several wrong ways to do it. I know there's several wrong ways to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been
I
involved in
think
some
we've
of
all
those.
experienced some of the wrong ways to do it, right? So
Yeah, yeah. We all started somewhere, right?
yeah,
But the way I do it, okay, so I own these 14 dividend stocks, and I have a watch list. Like
yeah,
that's not a new concept. I have, I don't know, 50 companies that just in this list that every once in a while I'll go through and see what the price is,
yeah,
and if it looks attractive, and I'm in a position where I want to start a new position, well, then I'll research it. So maybe some of these companies that we're talking about today are things that I should add to the watch list just to be aware of, because you never know what could happen in
yeah.
the stock market.
So what I find too with the watch list is, every now and then you also have to go back and clean it up and be like, oh, I've got like 70 or 80 or 90 companies on this list, and there's 20 of them that I'm never gonna buy. So it's time to clean up the watch list as well. So
Yeah.
that's something to kind of think about as well before you start adding another 10 or 20. Is like, go through the list and be like, is there any of these that I'm ever really going to look into seriously? And if not, just
Yeah.
get them out of your way. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And the way I deal with the watch list, it's not something that I'm referring to all the time, right? Every few months I'll put the ticker in and look at the chart, see where it's at. It's not something that takes a lot of time. But you're right, I could probably go through mine and probably find, oh, these 3 companies were bought out and they're not even there anymore. That kind
Yeah.
of thing. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, I'm gonna just quickly pull up your Twitter page there. You can find Michael on Twitter at Stock Pickin' Bartender. It's just ST, or how do you spell that?
Um, it's STKPKN bartender. Yeah. But if you search stock picking bartender on Twitter, you find it.
Cool. So yeah, definitely head over to Twitter and give Michael a follow. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and coming on the Passive Income Podcast and having an incredible conversation with me. Definitely, again, like I said, everybody that I talk to, I learn a little bit from. So I appreciate the knowledge that I'm gaining from everyone, yourself included. And I guess just anything you would like to say before we sign off.
Well, I had a great time. I was pretty nervous, coming into this, but it was fun. It was not so intense, right? It was fun,
Yeah.
and I'm inviting myself back. How's that?
Definitely. I'll have you back on a live stream. I'm trying to do a live stream once a month, the first Sunday of every month. And so the live streams, I don't know if you've seen them yet, where I get a panel of myself and 3 other people, and we just have a conversation for an hour or
Yeah.
so, and
Yeah.
just
I've
and
seen
then
I've seen one of them. Yeah.
yeah, and those are nice too because they're live, so you have the chat going on the side, and so you get some, either questions from the chat or just comments that you can discuss. So yeah, it's kind of fun. You never really know where those conversations are gonna go.
Sounds great. Sign me up.
Perfect. So with that said, we're gonna end it for this episode of the Passive Income Podcast. Be sure to click the link in the description below and use the code word Posse and check out some of the great merch they have over there at buyinvestingshirts.com, buyinvestingtshirts.com. And also don't forget to subscribe.
Thumbs up.